This is the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Jeb Blount, best-selling author of Fanatical Prospecting, Sales EQ, Objections, and Inked, and I'm here to help you fill up your pipeline, close bigger deals, and rock your commission check. You know, every author of every book on negotiating is quick to point out that in business and life, everything is being negotiated, and that as humans, we are negotiating naturally at almost every point in our daily lives. But despite this blinding flash of the obvious, despite the fact that salespeople are required to negotiate as part of the job, the brutal and undeniable truth is that most salespeople suck at negotiating. Now, there are many reasons why salespeople get ripped up like cheap t-shirts by buyers in sales negotiations, and it begins with poor emotional discipline. You see, effective negotiating begins and ends with emotional control. And when salespeople get beat at the negotiation table, 90% of the time is due to their inability to rise above disruptive emotions in the moment. Fear, insecurity, anger, attachment, eagerness, desperation, and more, well, they all conspire to undermine the salesperson's ability to think clearly and maintain their cool. It also comes from lack of training. Executives and leaders put tremendous pressure on their sales organizations to hit sales numbers, and then complain bitterly after the fact that their salespeople are not negotiating hard enough. One of the constant refrains that you hear from executives is that their salespeople leave too much money on the table. Yet these same executives invest very little money in training for sales negotiation skills, nor do they train their sales leaders to model, coach, or reinforce negotiating skills. It's as if salespeople are somehow supposed to be born with the ability to negotiate effectively. And when companies do provide training on negotiating skills, the training content and curriculum is more often than not disconnected from the actual sales process. Sales negotiating is treated as a separate discipline rather than part of an integrated and complete system. And worse, it's usually delivered by training companies that specialize in teaching negotiation tactics, but not sales-specific negotiating skills. Because trainers that work for these outfits have very little experience selling anything, they're unable to connect the dots between the sales process and sales negotiation. In my entire corporate sales and sales leadership career that spanned more than 20 years, I attended only one training session on negotiation. And that was because my sales manager used his personal budget to bring in a negotiation training company. Now, in that training, I mostly learned how to negotiate as a buyer, which was really helpful that year when I was purchasing my first home. But once the training was complete, we called it good and moved on, and we never reviewed the material again. These one-and-done training events feel good, but they have very little long-term impact. Leaders and sales enablement professionals fail to understand that sales negotiation skills are perishable and they diminish over time. And for this reason, if companies want their salespeople to negotiate at a higher level, there must be a commitment to both initial and ongoing training. And here's my message to all the executives. If you want your salespeople to stop leaving money on the table, you must teach them the core competencies, skills, techniques, and emotional intelligence needed to be effective at the sales negotiation table. Otherwise, it is you that's leaving money on the table. But some responsibility falls in the lap of sales professionals who fail to invest in themselves. Negotiation is a fundamental part of being a sales professional. No matter who you are and what you sell, you are going to be required to negotiate with buyers. The companies I worked for didn't provide much in the way of negotiation training, but with my income on the line, I realized that if I didn't become a better negotiator, I was going to pay a price. So I resolved to invest in myself and get better. I read everything I could get my hands on about negotiation. I paid my own way to attend negotiation seminars, and I sought out mentors who could help me master negotiation skills, strategies, tactics, and techniques. In sales, when you outlearn, you out-earn. To become an ultra performer, to keep your skills updated and sharp, to become a master sales negotiator, you must invest your own money, time, and effort in books, audiobooks, workshops, and online learning programs. You must use your drive time wisely. The average inside salesperson has a commute of 1 to 2 hours a day. The average outside sales rep spends between 4 and 5 hours a day in a car. Turn your car into automobile university or your commute into train, Uber, bus, or plane university. Subscribe to newsletters, podcasts, trade magazines, industry publications, blogs, and sales publications so that you stay current on your own industry and the sales profession. Invest your time in learning rather than listening to music or talk radio. Listening to educational and personal development audio programs during your commute or in your car can give you the equivalent of a university education many times over. Now, one of the things that they don't tell you about sales negotiating is that buyers, as a rule, generally have more power at the sales negotiation table and are better at negotiating sales outcomes than salespeople. And there are several reasons. First, buyers, especially professional buyers who work in procurement, are usually professionally trained in how to negotiate with salespeople and when. Thus, salespeople often find themselves in an amateur versus an expert competition. It's like a local club team taking on a professional sports team. The scale is tipped decidedly in the professional's favor. Buyers also have more information and knowledge than sellers. Buyers have entertained presentations and proposals from multiple vendors. They have information on specs, product and service comparisons, and pricing. In general, buyers are doing far more research on competing companies and market conditions than the salespeople they are negotiating with. And this information gives them leverage and power when negotiating with less informed sellers. And buyers tend to have more alternatives than salespeople. You have competitors out there, and all those competitors are knocking on your buyer's door. This strengthens the buyer's power position and allows them to exert greater emotional control at the sales negotiation table. But despite all of this, the number one reason salespeople are in a weak position and lack emotional discipline at the sales negotiation table are empty pipelines. When you have an empty pipeline, you get desperate. And when you get desperate, you get up close and personal with the universal law of need. Now, the universal law of need at the sales negotiation table says that the more you need to close the deal, the more you will give away to close it. And the more you need to close the deal, the less likely you are to close it. You see, effective prospecting and a full pipeline instantly make salespeople better negotiators. An abundant pipeline gives you emotional control, lots of alternatives, relaxed assertive confidence, and the ability to negotiate as if you don't need the deal. You want to learn more about sales negotiation? Go right now to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold and pick up a copy of my brand new book, Inked. It is the most comprehensive guide on sales negotiation that has ever been published.